let me just introduce you to our interesting panel, which we have brought together for all of you. May I call Deepak Nair, who is the Chief Information Officer of Tata AIG. Deepak, please take your seat. Mr. Anand. Anand is the Chief Marketing Officer of Fino, so he will talk to us more from the experience perspective. And then we have from NSDL Mr. Sunil Batra. Sunil, hi, welcome. He is the Chief Information Officer of NSDL, creating one of the best infrastructures in the country today for financial transactions. I have another very interesting person today. His name is Dharmen. Dharmen is from IIFL. He heads customer experience. Welcome to the conversation. And Mr. Rajesh Ram from Bank of India. He is the Chief Information Officer of Bank of India. Welcome, sir. So we have a great conversation today because I think in this panel we have a very, very interesting mix of people from all the segments, and I can see a lot of luminaries around in the audience also. I have Yagnesh Parekh, who is an industry veteran. I have Vaibhav, who has been a strong connoisseur of innovations, and he has built a lot of innovation stuff in the industry. Now, of course, he has jumped into the fintech arena from the banking sector. So all of you come from a different legacy backgrounds. So let us try to understand from you, what has been some of the major bottlenecks you have faced in this transformation into the digital journey? I think you have the best experience because you are generally trying to get from a big bank, a legacy bank with technology debt into the digital phase. What has been the major areas in area of experience bottlenecks that you have been facing?
Yeah, Mr. Babu, thank you for the introduction. I think correctly said, when I joined the bank, I used to work on a ledger, manual ledger. And then we had ALPM where only one person was accessing one computer. And then we had total branch mechanization where the entire branch was accessing the branch computers. And then we had core banking when all the employees were accessing all the computers across the country. And today we have got universal banking where customers are accessing my computer. So we have come a long way. And when the customers are the users of my system, they have no sympathy for me.
The third regulator, please. Yes. Social media.
Yes. So a slight glitch or a hitch in the system keeps all of us on the toes. I think that is really challenging. As you correctly said that we have got legacy systems. We are not very easy to do away with, but we have done a lot of things. I think most of the banks in the public sector also have tried to move with the times. We, in fact, very early built up our own private cloud, named it Megh Tara, just because Bank of India represents the star. We have made it Megh Tara, and Megh Tara is very, very big today. The another challenge is that the more I increase the compute, the more I increase the storage, bigger is the demand. Every next day, every next vertical wants to do something new and experiment on that. And as you correctly said, at the end of the day, whether the experience, whether it is my customer, that is the branch person, or the bank's customer, the customers at the other end, each one of them is looking for a very smooth and comfortable journey. And they are, in simple terms, comparing with the new fintechs, who have got the agility, which is very hard to match for me. I think that is the biggest challenge I am facing.
Perfect. Sunil, from your side, you have had this infrastructure for a long time, and you are building it up for the country. And I know that NSDL also has a division called as Protean now, which is trying to make things more interesting for the sector. So how have you faced this transition?
So the NSDL was formed in 1996, and the purpose of the formation was digitization. Physical shares converted into electronic, So I believe, we have been one of the first in the country to do a large scale digitization. At that time, banks were all doing ledgers, manual ledgers and all. So the purpose of the organization was to, bring in digitization to the country. And that probably has been helping us to, roll out from a rolling settlement to a T+5 settlement to a T+1 settlement, which we are now ahead of most of the countries in the world. Also, the way we provide our services to our investors, is slightly different from the way a bank or a broking house would do. So we provide our services through our depository participants, who are typically banks or large broking houses. So for us, the digital journey is not just to modernize my platform or my website. For me, the digital journey is to imagine a customer coming on a portal of a bank, doing some transaction there, coming to my portal, doing the transaction there. And in some cases, I need to do an e-sign to make sure we follow the compliance part. I need to integrate with e-sign, and the customer has to go back all the way. And considering the patience people have, 10 seconds span, 15 seconds spans, that has been the most challenging part. And to add to the complexity, as I said, we are working with variety of our depository participants. Everybody is in different phase of their digital transformation, but we have to support all of them at the same time, right? Because we are also undergoing transformation. At the same time, everybody has a blueprint and they are following the blueprint and they want us to support them. So it has been a very complex journey, but I think APIs and other few technologies we use, which has actually helped us to make sure we integrate seamlessly with most of our customers. I think the number of Demat account holders in the country was around 40 million just before COVID. Okay, it took us 25 years almost, from 1996 onwards in the country to reach 40 million. And guess what? In last 2.5 years, which was the most difficult time for all of us, we have crossed 100 million now. So we had to make sure our digital journeys are so that people sitting at home are able to actually open the accounts, do the transactions seamlessly, and support all our participants. So that was the complexity, but I think we did fairly well, because that shows in the number that today we are over 100 million. Wonderful. And not just that, but the custody. So this is the retail part. Even the institutional side also, we today the assets under our custody at NSDL is more than 4 trillion. So USD. So that is the scale which we have reached, and because of the networks, our customers are over 99% of the pin codes in the country. So Demat right from the Demat account opening, where the personal typically use a 3-in-1 account, where you go to bank and open a 3-in-1 account. So right from there to do a transaction and make sure you are able to buy and sell shares and get the money in T+2 or T+1 as we are today. I mean, that has been an interesting journey, and making sure that customer is actually not dropping out in the entire journey. And supporting all our participants in that journey has been very, very complex and challenging. But I think APIs and other few areas which we worked on has really helped us go through it.
I think let me first talk to Dharmin, who is in a customer experience specialist, because you both have spoken from the infrastructure side and technology side. Dharmin, how have you seen the experience transfer from the customer, especially in this digital side?
First, thanks for inviting us, and congratulations for completing 20 years.
Thank you so much.
If you look at it, I think there are two basic important factors which you have to consider. One is the COVID, which has actually pushed everyone into digitalization. That hard times has given some benefits. So it's the outcome of those hard times where everybody has get used to digital transactions. So that one what you call is we have leapfrogged the digitalization phase. So that is one advantage which we have in this industry in financial services, where the digitalization has become the I would say it becomes a bottom line. It's become a base, and then people start building on it. And second is obviously it goes to the government of India, which has made the compliance so easy, where you can open the account digitally in 5 minutes. The onboarding becomes very, very simple. So if you look at, if Mr. Batra has talked about moving from 40 million to 100 million, the major, I would say, the contribution is the simplification of the process, where compliances has become easy, the e-sign become easy, the everything, opening account online within 5 minutes much become easy. Today, all the accounts which we open in financial services, whether it's my securities business, or you talk about financial business, or you talk about loan, everything is in 5 minutes. Everything happens online, everything happens, you don't have to go anywhere. So your onboarding becomes much simpler. And then the people start using your mobile apps. Apps becomes very, very important. So there's where the security thing will come in. But that look at when the COVID starts, we have some 1 million downloads. Today we already crossed 5 millions. So look at the way today probably more than 95% transaction happens online.
What has been the bottleneck there?
See, if you look at bottleneck is you look at, I will not call it bottleneck. I would call it the experience phase. See, one is the adaptability, which has been accelerated by the, I would say by the COVID or the importance of being you can't move out. So that adaptability is his own phase. So after adaptability, the biggest challenge is how each company has improved their UI UX. There are two things. One is you have to be simple. See how easy, convenient you are to the customer to the usage. So the more, see, there's a concept called case.
Correct.
Keep it simple, stupid. So the more you keep it simple, the more adaptability to the client.
Simplify and amplify.
Simplify. So simplification was the one process which everybody looked at, that how to change the UX.
Fantastic.
How to make it that. Second very important is how you add value. When everybody is doing the same thing, how you create differentiation, how you create personalization. That is where hyper-personalization come into picture. So we are still in that phase. We are still not reached there. We are still looking at customers in terms of brackets. We are still looking at customer in terms of segments. Each customer is still not a segment for us. So those level of hyper-personalization is the next phase.
Wonderful. So now let me come to Deepak. From your side, what is that kind of measurability that you like, or how are people bringing in measurability into the both infrastructure side and the customer satisfaction side?
So I'd put it this way, Babu, anything that you start, you should know what the purpose is, right? So that's the why. So you basically document the why. And when you say why, everything cannot be just, qualitative. You have to kind of put some quantitative numbers. So what we do, and we've taken it from Amazon, I can give full credit there, is write a one-page press release before you start the project.
Wow.
Okay. When you're doing that, you're actually thinking. It can't be more than one page, right? You write in English first, and then you try to put some numbers. And you kind of come to it saying that, what am I trying to achieve by doing this? Am I reducing my page response time from 8 seconds to 3 seconds or 2 seconds? Or am I making the journey of the customer from X number of minutes to Y number of minutes? Or reducing the overall cycle time, right? Or the number of steps that I'm going to reduce. Because today's customer and literally wants a few things. One, it needs to be hassle-free. The experience needs to be hassle-free. He doesn't want hassle. Second thing, he wants instant gratification. I'm doing something, I need it right now. Because when you're making a payment transaction, for example, if it fails, there is a transaction and the experience, a real world that is failing, right? So you can measure that. So everything we kind of try to bring some level of achievement quantified, right? Every project, you can define the why, you can convert into qualitative statements and quantify that with numbers, saying that this is what we'll achieve. I think that makes it very clear for throughout, like the BA who's working on it, the project manager who's working on it, the business evangelist who's working on it, or the developer who's working on that, this is what I need to achieve. So that's what we do for all the projects.
So Anand, you have been into, again, a very interesting space, payment bank space, and you have worked with a very different set of customers, correct? From the experiential perspective, how have you created the measurement index or that indices with which you can say how effective your activity is for your customer? How do you expect the customer to measure you also?
Now for this consumer, what's the real measure, right? It's a two-way street. One, for me, as to where are we headed. Two, for the consumer, as to how good or bad he thinks we really are, or his experience with us. Final arbiter, I guess, of everything that all of us do in whatever form, right? Whether it's marketing or technology or anything, right? Is, did the sale happen? Did the transaction happen? Was this person able to successfully open an account? Did the guy get a hot debit card on the spot, which we call a hot debit card, tuck, and the guy is banking ready? Or was he able to buy that insurance policy within 2 minutes or whatever is the turnaround time? So one, obviously, sales is the biggest arbiter of everything. I mean, at the end of the day, we are all, let's face it, right? Every single company has two objectives, right? To meet a legal social need and to make profits, right? So that's probably the final arbiter where there is no escaping it. But if I break it down, one very interesting arbiter that we've been increasingly using is the dropout rate. If the guy starts a transaction, how many drop out? And that becomes a very good bellwether to really figure are things working or not. And today, technology allows us to do that and even intervene. So whether the guy is transacting with the intermediary or at an app, that dropout rate starts becoming a very important metric or parameter. But from the consumer sense, how does he evaluate us? And to that point that you made that there would be this measure that for financial services in terms of the consumer part. So Twitter is one, obviously. And this school dude in the middle of nowhere in Darbhanga actually comes on to Twitter, opens an account, has exactly one follower perhaps to start with, does that because he wants to complain against a financial services brand. And it's very interesting how they've cracked the code over there. They know that if they go through the normal channel, it's going to take its usual, SLA and TAT and,
they
everything.
will tag Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
No, absolutely. So the amount of times, we've seen that, this guy would have directly tagged and, if it's UP, then it's straight away Yogi ji and Modi ji. I mean, the local things, don't matter. Anywhere else in the country, it's directly, the Prime Minister or the PMO office. And when you speak to them, say, okay, but what's the point? He's saying, sir, hame pata hai ki moment we do this, somebody will call and my problem will be solved. So I think, in that sense, that part has been kind of cracked. But the consumer's evaluation of a brand, and as a practitioner on both sides, as formerly being a consultant and now here, I think Net Promoter Score as a concept becomes a very important way to measure what the customer is rating you as. I mean, it's a two-way street. I mean, I know there are a lot of detractors of the score, but I guess it's very unforgiving in that sense, right? I mean, how willing are you to recommend this to somebody? And consumers would only recommend something that they feel good about because somewhere they feel that their personal reputation is at stake. So then how you manage that process, how do you get the insight, how do you measure how consistent you are, then really starts kicking into exactly what you would want to do and grow. So that becomes really the, the metrics, the parameters around which a lot of stuff runs.
So let's get to the next thing. All of us are talking about innovation, and it is essential to make sure that the innovation happen at a faster pace and at the same time give the experience and at the same time make sure that you are compliant. From the tech side, how are organizations working on it? And from the business side, how you are working on it? And probably, Deepak, you can speak from both the sides because you are doing both the things.
So yeah, I always say that it is not the or operator, it is the and operator. So you need to figure out how to do this and that, right? You need to comply. Definitely there's no denying the fact that, we can't do anything which is non compliant, right? Second thing is we need to also be very privy of the various risks which are there. To be honest, one gets scared with all the mobile banking apps and different UPI apps and everything which is there on the mobile, and suddenly, you are having thousands of SMSs coming with all the bit.ly links. You don't even know in a bit.ly link, where is it going, right? People are susceptible, people are vulnerable, and they might end up clicking that, and that could lead to the Jamtara kind of events, right? So it's prevalent, it is there, it is easy to crack. And I myself have seen many cases where it's just, very simple, there is SIM jacking, everything, all that kind. How do we protect our customer is very important, right? So while we are working on one hand to make the customer's life easier and everything instant and fast and, convenient, on the other hand, we also hold the responsibility to ensure that he doesn't suffer because of our system failures. So there has to be a fine balance. So what you can do is, like, one of the simple things is, rather than doing DevOps, do DevSecOps, right? Okay. Ensure that security is inbuilt into your development, grounds up. Yeah, grounds up. And it's part of your life cycle. And it needs to be done not in a periodic. So there were, times when we used to say that, okay, these set of applications, we will do it annually or once in 2 years. These set of applications we'll do quarterly, half yearly. These set of applications we'll do monthly. That's not enough. Right? It has to be within the development and release cycle that you are. It's a continuous loop.
Let me just try to talk to Sunil also. How have you been looking at these bottlenecks, especially when it comes to innovations and managing this ease with security and getting an overall picture on a regular real-time basis? How have things been working for you, or what you look at it?
I think that's actually one of the most complex, puzzles to solve today, because we know the technology can deliver so much, but at the same time we have to make sure we are compliant with what we are doing and we have the right controls in place. So I think it's important for us to, before we, like he talked about DevSecOps, I think those are the ones which we have to have in our process to make sure we are actually doing security as we develop the programs or the codes. Gone are the days when we do once in a year or once in 6 months a VAPT cycle and fix the vulnerabilities and all. So the time in which we are moving ahead, I think that's outdated today. That's history. So I think we need to make sure while we transform our process or while we simplify our process, the controls which we had in the older processes are in some form available in the new journey which we create. Control in terms of making sure, putting two-factor authentication if required somewhere, because there's a lot of frauds happening these days. And as you said, unknown. The unknown is something which we don't even know what to do, but there's so much known which we are actually struggling to meet as well. So from a technology perspective, I think it's important to put the right controls in place, put the right alerts in place. There's a lot of analytics we can do in terms of trying to find out if, there is an alert which can tell, okay, there is something wrong which might be, happening through this transaction. But I think the overall controls in place is must. The user experience, I think is again, very different than putting those controls in place, because user wants everything to happen in a seamless way in 4 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a demat account has to open in 40 seconds because somebody else is opening in 40 seconds. But at the same time, I need to make sure I have to have an e-sign done, because to make sure it is actually the same customer who is opening the demat account. So while technology can play its part, but the process simplification has to come with the controls in each of the process or steps in the process we have. Only then I think the technology can actually implement those processes. And I think there are enough tools available to put those controls, but I think it's important for us to draw what we need to, put as control and then have technology enable doing those controls.
Great. Dharmen, from your side, from a customer's perspective, how do you look at this, trading between ease and compliance, and that fine line, how are you drawing it out? And how are organizations managing this? On one side to give frictionless, at the other side make sure that the customer is compliant. How do you look at this?
So I divide into 3 parts. One is that financial industry is the most regulated one. Especially if you look at broking, we have NSDL, we have NSE, we have SEBI, everybody auditing us. So that is one way. So they keep check and control in balances. But what most important is, whenever we are developing, as he has already pointed out, that first thing is what we are developing, the security is the first thing to do. But most important, what we do is we look from the customer perspective, that ease should not go off. The ease of transaction has to be there. So how we look at it is the 3 P's. One is the technology. When you are developing, how much control you are putting it. One is regulatory. Second, how you can build on that. How you have check and balances on that. Very, very important to know. How you get the triggers, how you get the notification, how you get the trigger if something is going on. Second piece is we have used analytics. You are getting so much of transactions. There is a huge transaction happening. If you look at volumes, have grown multiple times. So very important is to have a tab on if something is going wrong, how you're going to catch it up. So we have used analytics. We have built models in terms of having faith to build the trust with the our customers. We have derived on the parameters. Based on those parameters, we have built an analytical model. Model throws out the most risky transactions. And then we basically put it in quartiles. And based on those quartiles, we decide whether we call up those customers, we send them the voice blast to confirm, or we approach our business partners to go back and confirm. So there are 3 levels. So that depends upon how. That is the strongest piece we have done in terms of analytics, which gives us a lot of control. this gives us a proactive, once it gives a faith to the customer that we are on top of it. There is lot of confidence building is there. And the last piece is where when customer is using our services, we have to keep a track on that. So all these three when you look at, and very important is we ensure that we are not compromising on servicing, because end of the day is end-to-end experience. We have to be there where customer is. So we keep easing it out also. So if you look at our channels, we are available whether you want to chatbot, you want voice bot, you want WhatsApp. We have actually built all the journey in WhatsApp itself. It doesn't have to go anywhere. The way people use today WhatsApp, they don't want to use anything else. So if you today want to change your mobile number, email ID, address, everything is available on WhatsApp. So make it so convenient for him. But at the time when he is using WhatsApp, we ensure that security is not compromised. Your OTPs are not compromised.
So great. So coming to the next thing, when it is innovation, cloud is something which is absolutely something that you cannot avoid. So how are organizations, especially the public sector organization, looking at cloud? Is there any cloud mapping strategy for the public cloud side? Has something happened in that area?
A lot of things have happened in between. I think IDRBT has formed a committee, and there is a lot of discussions going on. They are going to come out with a policy and some framework. So that is continuously happening. In the meantime, I'll tell you the mindset which is there at the public sector banks, including ours. We are all for it. So number one is that the entire technology team or the CIOs, CTOs, they are for it. There is no doubt in that. But how to map it to the regulations and the apprehensions which the management is having or the regulators are having, that is the challenge which we are facing as of now, and that's what we are trying to address in that group. Frankly speaking, it's not that key public sector banks, as I said, that we are already there on our own private cloud. So nothing new to that. We are very open for a hybrid cloud, and we have started putting baby steps towards that. In fact, we are partnering with few of the cloud providers, and we are slowly moving into that. What we were in between looking at is community cloud. So something like that where we can all come together. I think this is the community where I think this hall is a community. So we can, whether we can come in a community cloud and work on that. So I think it is inevitable. It has to come. It will come. Only thing, the time it takes to move to that.
Excellent. Yeah. Deepak, how have organizations been mapping their journey into the cloud, especially in a regulated sector like banking, where people were strong no-no for the cloud, and now suddenly with all these innovations coming, you cannot scale up exponentially to that level. So everyone is trying to map their cloud journey. What is happening in this area?
So I'll go the traditional route. Everybody had their own data center and everything was closed within the walls, right? So initially it started off saying that, okay, can we move the non-core bit of it, non-core applications to the cloud, experiment a little bit. So from traditional data center to maybe private cloud, moving to the next of experimenting with cloud in terms of a closed environment, not public cloud, but through the cloud provider, you go to the next stage of getting some assets, migrated into the cloud. We have come to a stage where now we are working. We have a data center. We also have a set of applications with one of the cloud providers who's more traditional. When I say traditional, it's not actually traditional. A little bit backed by a strong brand name, and a public cloud. So all my digital assets today are with one provider. My core is with another cloud provider. And the old peripheral legacy which I'm carrying is on the data center. So the last 3 years, we have not invested a single rupee in buying any server on this thing. Everything is done cloud first, microservices. So I think people are moving towards that. Insurance specifically, I can say, is in a slightly, it's ahead in the journey, because number one, in private sector, we are 22-year-old thing. We're not as legacy as maybe some of the banks who are there, and even they have made huge progress, right? So Banking sector has also been completely disrupted. And it's about majority of the digital assets, I can say, is going on the cloud now. And we want to scale up. And scalability is coming through all these things like containerization and all. So a lot of platform is also getting used. So the journey of different companies at different stages, but I think it's all coming to a mixed bag. So multi-cloud is also there. There are players who are doing multi-cloud. There are players who are doing hybrid with experimentation and taking baby steps and cautious steps, and rightly so. Another thing, Babu, I will mention is from the black box of cloud, right? Information and knowledge is power. And know your bill.
Know your bill.
Okay.
That's a good one.
So, know your bill before you enter into it. Divorce can be very difficult with a cloud partner, right? So, an egress cost is something which, if you're not aware, that is one of the, typically in the blind spot, many of the guys don't even discuss it, but it's one of the key components. So, you need to know, like in telecom, you can get a summary bill and you can get a detailed bill, right? Itemized bill, we call it. So, you should basically know each and every component of that itemized bill. We need to invest time. Cloud has been there for a long, long time, but we need to invest time in understanding how this works, right? So we did the full study of the, how are you going to build, what are the components. Still there would be some blind spots. The things that I don't know is one thing, but at least I try to keep adding to the fact of what you know.
Wonderful. Anything more to add from your side, Sunil?
I think just a couple of things, I think as we all said, we have to get to cloud, whether today or tomorrow or, day after. But I think it's important for us to assess how mature we are in terms of moving to cloud. There are multiple ways in which you do. You just lift and shift application there. But then probably you may not get the benefit of the scalability that cloud may offer. So I think it's important to assess ourselves whether we are ready to, we have to go to cloud, and there are legacy applications which cannot be modernized overnight. But what are the components that you can take it to the cloud and leverage the cloud capabilities in terms of scalability, scalability? I think that is something we should be very clear of, rather than just moving first and then figuring out what to do. And for us, the way we have done is that we have set up an on-prem cloud. We have not taken any of the cloud providers. We have really set up an on-prem cloud at NSDL, which is typically a hyper-converged infrastructure. We are migrating application to that cloud to see whether our applications are kind of cloud ready, they are working in the virtualized environments or not. And then probably we have a strategy now as to what do we take to cloud and when. So we are again, as you said, taking slight baby steps, but I think we are in that direction of moving to cloud.
Great. So let's go a little more into the experiential side. We are talking about this big game in the world called as analytics and AI, which will only work as much as data you have and the quality of data you have. Now with all these data silos in place, can you actually give a very, very converged kind of personalization to the customer? And how are organizations today working around this?
See, I think what the good part is that I think increasingly more and more data is coming in straight through in a digital manner, right? So whether it is social media chatter, transaction on devices, the amount of intelligence with the sales front end, which is in a very human form and probably not captured on a CRM at times, or it just is in the sales guy's mind, and that's probably also his or her calling card. I think that is somewhere shrinking. So there are wealth management kinds of businesses where probably it's still, the gray part is very important. But in a lot of typical transactional businesses, information is flowing in. And what increasingly folks are doing is really, really investing in any system. We call it Lake, or put it on HDFS, or put it on the cloud, or wherever. But just getting that data in. You will never have a 100% view of the customer. And I guess that is something which you've got to live with. You've got to accept it. Right? You will never have an optimal solution. It's difficult to optimize. In fact, behavioral economics always says that you should in fact look at a satisfactory solution, because sometimes the sheer cost of optimization might just be too high, know your bill kind of a situation. So one part is that. Secondly, it gets very important for brands in this kind of a situation to really go out and understand consumers. And that's where then the personalization part starts coming in, right? What do you personalize? Why? What is the guy's objective in doing that? Once you get that, this whole, the the real reason for consuming a product, and hence what will I offer, starts becoming far easier. Delivery is far easier today, right? I mean, courtesy so many of these tools that allow you to push the right offer to the customer at the right time. The guy has abandoned something, I mean, we all know that, if you try to buy insurance on some of the aggregator sites, and you don't, God save you for the next 48 hours, right? I mean, your phone wouldn't stop ringing, right? So that kind of is at an extreme level. But that said, I guess very, very importantly, so that this part happens, I guess a big part, and a lot of folks really miss this, is going back and sitting with that guy who's consuming the product and saying, look, why are you consuming, right? What's really happening? And I guess once that starts happening, even the kind of offer, the language and everything that goes in will start getting better. And your ROI on that will only then improve, because at the end of the day, consumers, people buy from people, right? I mean, no matter how much it's an electronic interface, but that trust in the brand starts mattering. And somewhere you had mentioned, what's the big bottleneck? And I'm just picking up from what Subbu said, that, with this whole, big billion day, etc., that will start coming in, for a lot of consumers, they just lose confidence with a lot of digital ways of doing things, is when transactions just fail, right? So I think that it just breaks, right? I mean, then they say, let me just go back to my tried and tested method. I think that just becomes a big, big bottleneck for a lot of adoption. And I guess that's where also the challenge and the fun is.
Fantastic. From the IT folks' perspective, you have been working with so many data silos, okay? Integrating all this together, one is data governance, on the other side is data quality. So with all these things in place, how are CIOs actually working around with the, the data harnessing or making it most apt for the organization to harness the value out of this data?
So I'd start with saying that data is currency, and that is the buzzword, and that is where the valuation is.
Overused statement.
Yes, totally. But just to put it in very simple terms, I have a job, and my job is to give single version of the truth and single source of information. When you have multiple sources of information, there are multiple versions of the truth, which will keep running in. And that was the situation that when I joined and started with. Somebody is taking a report from X system, another one taking from Y system, and then massaging it, putting it into a nice PPT format and presenting it, and then reconciling, right? So we need to get out of that. So we implemented a data lake. We brought all the different systems into it and migrated all the legacy reporting, dashboarding, analytics, and even data science into this, saying that this is the only source of truth. If you need to consume anything, consume here. If you say this is wrong, then tell us. We will correct that. And that is the only way you can use it. Today, as we speak, the entire organization's analytics, MIS, dashboard, CEO reports, leadership views, and the data science algorithms all running on the data lake. I think that's a journey which is painful. It's not easy, because you will have different systems talking about the same data element in different formats. Aggregations could be different. The granularity of the data could be different. Definitions of it could be different. Formula of, like we saw that different sources were computing the same element in different formula, right? You have to bring all of that together, saying that this is the organization's definition. So master data management that you mentioned, it's not just defining the master data, it's also saying how do you derive that value and standardizing it at an organization level. We have to do all of that. We have to see what will be excluded, what will be included when you are doing aggregation, right?
Interesting.
And this was also taken to how we are going to report it to the regulator, because we don't want to go wrong there, right? And regulator can come back after 3-4 years saying this is the data that you had submitted then, now explain. And your data is moving and changing. Your policies, your transactions, they keep changing. You are not keeping a snapshot every time, right? So we need to have that traceability also. So the data challenge is not a very easy thing.
Any interesting insights either of you want to share from your perspective about this integration of this data?
I think all of us had gone through the same challenges. We had various systems and data in pockets and all. So I think the way we have also implemented is we have set up a data lake on the big data platform. But I think getting the data onto that platform, is a mammoth task. We have been able to achieve that successfully. But I think the important point is, if I had to generate a report as of a previous day, whether I generate today, tomorrow, or 10 days later, it should give me the same output, which was never the case. When I generate a report today, it gives me X. I generate same report tomorrow for the same day, it gives me Y and then Z. So I think that's where our ability to define the data structures is important. That I don't do too much computation for reporting. I compute and keep, and I then just extract the data. If you try and do computations at that time on the fly, you may definitely go wrong, because you depend on the programming skills of the person who is doing at that point in time. So whatever you can do in terms of denormalization, as we typically call it, as because transaction systems keep data in a different structure. The reporting system, if you simply dump the data into the reporting system or data lake, it's not going to work. You have to design the data lake in a fashion that it can be used, and it can be used by simple tools, by just extracting the data and not just aggregating and not just doing complex workarounds and playing with data. That is where I think the problem is. So designing the data lake, with the right data elements and the data structure, I think is the most important thing. Otherwise, we'll create one more data lake and we'll keep struggling with the data again there.
Would you like to share anything from I think your data will be much more legacy data. So any interesting challenge that you have faced in this area?
Yeah, as you correctly said, we have a lot of data. And since long, we have kept a good repository even today, and we do mine it once in a while for our personal users, for the bank's users. The biggest challenge what we have faced in the past few years, we are yet to go for the data lake in a full way. In fact, we have been using our existing data warehouse and trying to clean the data and try to do data governance on top of that. We have tried to keep it very simple. In fact, all the clutter, we have kept it aside in one side, whereas the main data which we use for regular purpose, we have kept it on one side. So that's the biggest challenge. But the bigger challenge which is coming is the analytics part of it, because each new application owner which is coming along with the fintechs, the verticals they are coming with the fintechs, they want to have some analytics on the data. And then they are looking for the data which I have with me. And they want to mine all the data in all the forms I have.
Wow.
So that challenge is always there. And as you correctly said, single version of truth is a big challenge. That's a big challenge. And many times, I know my analytics is giving good results of 70%. I know what's the luck part in that, because the 30% I know is full of errors. But still, I'm able to make 70%. This can, if I have a rich, as correctly said, that if I have a data lake and if I have one version of the truth, I think I will have better strike rate of more than 80-85%.
Yeah, Subbu.
One thing that intrigues me about the panelists is they still have to go to the man with the money to get an approval for whatever they want to do. And I see that struggle all the time, in the times that, so there is a term called, which you can probably add to your dictionary today, is there's a term called Sisyphean task. It's kind of like pushing a car on an uphill, only to see it roll down, and then you have to go down again and you have to push it back, and then again it rolls down, and you do it all along. And it's like, it's that one thing that I think that's really worrying me, is that it's the known unknown, or the known that you face every day, but you can't fix it because the man with the money says, chalta hai na, chale no. So how do you take that? Is there, the other comparison is like, there's a round wheel and a square wheel. You'd show the guy, look, there is this round wheel available, but he says, I'm so busy pushing this square wheel that I don't have the time to come to the round wheel yet.
I would not put it like man with the money as a separate man. I'm the man with the money. Okay. The reason I say that is I represent the organization. Every one of us represents the organization. If I am convinced and I'm using my diligence to evaluate something and it is logical and then I can explain it internally, you get the money. Okay? And again, I'll come back to this. If we know why we are doing something, right, and that is good for the organization, nobody will say no to the money as long as there is not money wasted, right? It's not about, we always said this, It's not about cost cutting, it is about cutting wastage, right? Anything which is good for the organization with a cost which, it warrants, will be done. Irrespective of whether it is with the budget, without the budget, outside the budget, there are ways to get the budget, right? You need to have that clarity, and you need to show the value. That's it.
Absolutely great.
I would just like to add one thing is that what I have experienced in my company, that even the top man is more than willing to take a risk to do the innovation. If he is seeing that it has a long-term future,
Value.
this is what the value going to add to the customer. And this is going to be the future. And this is how the technology is going to move. So otherwise you will lose the first mover advantage also. So the early you move, the better you can. See, there's always a learning curve. As you talked about moving from 0.65 to 3.1 is a curve. So the early you start, the early you move. So that is very important is if you can catch the trend and you ride on it, you immediately start getting benefits once you implement. Now implementation, how good you do is your responsibility. Have you viewed it properly? Have you designed it properly? Have you understood the process? And then you have went for it. Or you just go on with the fact. So you have to understand that what is your need, are you able to define it? And when implementation come into picture, are you able to do it properly?
I think we had some wonderful overall insight from all of you. So thank you very much everyone.